coming. We're so excited to be here this evening. This is the first time that a couple of our guests have ever come to Canada, let alone been to the festival, and the first time that our friend Jeff has returned since 2005. So we're so excited to have him here this evening. You know, the festival is something that I've been working on actually. It was the first thing I did when I came to Toronto, actually, from the suburbs, from working in comic book stores and things like that. And I partnered with The Beguiling because I had a big idea and no means at all. And The Beguiling had nothing but means and no time to do anything other than be the best comic store in the Toronto, as far as I'm concerned, and one of the best in the world. And so here we are. This is our 9th year. Next year's our 10th year. And we've been doing the festival. Actually, it'll be my 10th anniversary in October of this year, and so I'm kind of looking forward to it. The mission statement for Toronto Comic Arts Festival is that TCAF exists to promote the breadth and diversity of comics and what is considered comics as a legitimate medium of literary and artistic worth. We'd like to welcome you, obviously, to the festival. What I want to talk about just before we thank some people is that, you know, the festival is very different year to year. And we were actually asked yesterday, well, what are you going to do for next year? This year you had all the greatest kids guests and all the greatest international guests, and it's like, next year you're going to do superheroes? And I said, well, I don't think the other shows in town would appreciate that much, but we'll find something. We'll give you a reason to come back in 2013. But really, we do these events, we do these shows to support the artists that make great work, and to support the work itself. And I'd like to thank everyone who comes to the festival, everyone who comes to our events throughout the year, as well as TCAF, for all of their support. It's you buying these books, and it's you supporting these and talking us up on Twitter and Facebook, which has just been crazy today, that makes it possible for things like this to exist. So thank you, everybody who's come out this evening. Next, I'd like to actually thank all of our sponsors. The Beguiling, who I mentioned, who all of the staff are working this evening and have been working for the last 7 days straight. Little Island Comics, the comic store we opened this year, which is the North America's first comic store for kids, and is going to celebrate its first anniversary in September as well. We'd also like to thank Owl Kids, who are sponsoring all of our kids programming, and that's where you can see Jeff will be doing a signing there tomorrow, as well as a presentation at the Owl Kids Day, which is located at St. Paul's on Bloor, which is just a little bit east of the reference library on the south side of the street. It's a full day of programming. We hope you'll check it out. They're also sponsoring the kids area, which is going to be just at the back tomorrow. We'd like to thank our consular friends, including the Italian Cultural Institute, the Consulate General of France in Toronto, the Flemish Literature Fund, the Japan Foundation, and also, unfortunately, we had a cancellation today. Our good friend Olivier Chorin, who's coming from Belgium, couldn't make it this year, but we still appreciate the support of that organization, as well as Norla, who helped support our Norwegian guests this year. Finally, we'd like to thank local sponsors Madoko, and last but not least, Toronto Public Library, which is where we are now, and we couldn't have this event without them. So, on that note, I'd like to introduce from Toronto Public Library, Abe Velasco. Abe?
Hi. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Bram & Bloom Appel Salon at the Toronto Reference Library. So as Chris said, my name is Abe Velasco and I work in the Communications Department of the Toronto Public Library. And it's my pleasure on behalf of the library to welcome all of our guests from across the city of Toronto, across Canada, across the US, and from around the world. I was told that there's guests from 5 different continents this year, and I think that's a pretty astonishing feat, and it really speaks to the high caliber of the festival, Chris and team, who continue to up the ante every year. And the library has hosted TCAF since May 2009, and this is our 4th consecutive year. And it's been a resounding success every year. And one of the reasons that we host TCAF is because supporting the city's cultural, arts, and creative communities is a very important priority to the library. And as such, our partnership with TCAF is such a wonderful fit. And again, we're glad to be doing it for the 4th consecutive year. And we're very thankful to the wonderful team at TCAF, in particular, Chris and Peter Berkmo, and all the amazing volunteers who are wearing the pink t-shirts this weekend for putting together a great festival from year to year to year. And this year's show is amazing. So I hope you guys all enjoy your time with us at the library this weekend. If you guys have time, please make sure you check out some of the items we have on display from our comics and graphic novel collections on the first and second floor. And for the first time, the library is going to be a TCAF exhibitor, so I hope you drop by our table on the first floor just to learn more a little bit about our collections, programs, and services. So hope you guys have fun, and I'm just going to give it back to Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Abe. I haven't told this story before. I don't think anyone knows this. My introduction to comics was actually through the Transformers. As a boy, there were television commercials. Actually, I was just obsessed with the commercial that was the cartoon, and I had all the toys. And we were in the convenience store one day, and when I was 8, and I noticed that there was a Transformers comic book, and I hadn't really even thought about comic books before that, but the idea that there were more stories than I had seen on the television show made it that I needed to immediately pick that up. It was the most important thing at that moment and remained that way for a number of years. I gradually was introduced by my friends to superhero comics because Transformers is for, for little kids, but the X-Men is for grown-ups. And at 14, I mean, that's really important to be a grown-up. And so I read the X-Men books for a while until in high school, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should check out some other stuff." And I was like, yeah, whatever. And one day, after I had managed to get a job at a comic book store with only my knowledge of the X-Men, because that's sometimes all it takes, I discovered The Invisibles by Grant Morrison. And I'd been reading Sandman for a couple of, I'd read a couple of issues here and there and thought, oh, that's pretty good. And it was really The Invisibles that, especially coming as it did when I was, 16 or 17, it was about counterculture and revolution, and they used bad words. And that was exactly what I needed to read at the time. And so finally, my reading had expanded to the X-Men and Vertigo. And then one day, even though I was making my own comics at that point, little comic strips, and I would photocopy them and put them together, a friend said, "Have you seen these self-published comics?" And it hadn't occurred to me that people other than me made comics and zines to hand around the school. And the very first self-published comic I read that I can recall was Bone. It was Bone, the Moby Dick issue. And I did not like it. I had not read Moby Dick, and I did not understand why these small characters whom, it was very well drawn, but I'm like, why are these people reenacting I don't get where this fits. Like, I think it was 12, just could not figure it out. But then he gave me the next issue, and I laughed out loud throughout the whole thing, and that was fun. And because of that, Bone was the first sort of black and white indie comic I really read and followed and bought, which was most important, because it's fine to get it loaned every once in a while or borrow it from the library, although I don't think that was happening at the time. It was great that I actually I had something to go to the comic book store for, and I started going every month, and then I started going every 2 months, and then I started going every 3 months, and you kids today don't know how good you've got it with those books coming out 200 pages at a time. That is not how some of the older folks in this room remember reading Bone. Needless to say, I became a lifelong fan of Jeff's work. Well, sorry, a 17 to lifelong fan, and I'm not saying how old I am now, how old I feel either. And it's been amazing and inspiring to get to know Jeff over the years as well, because he's not like the characters he puts on the page, in that he's a, 3 apples tall bone character or anything like that. But he is like the characters on the page in that he has an amazing zest for life. And I'm inspired by Jeff's work, but I'm also inspired by the life that he talks about, touring around the world and getting to see all the stuff that I would like to see. And I'm going to see one day, darn it. And it's just getting to talk to him and hearing about his passion for the work that he does is so inspiring. And whether that has been Shazam for DC Comics, where I got to listen to an hour-long presentation on all the stuff he put into Shazam that you don't even know is in that book. Like, it is awesome. To Bone, to now Razzle, which is just blowing my mind with every new issue that comes out. I'm very fortunate to have known him, and so we're very fortunate to have him on stage this evening. Jeff Smith, everybody. My friends Gabriel Ba and Fabio Moon, I discovered much later. They, like me, maybe not grew up, but definitely came to Bone later in their lives and have been fans of the series almost since its inception, as far as I can recall. And now, before they were creating comics themselves or creating them professionally, they were reading Bone as from early as they could. I first discovered the twins' work because I'm a big fan of Casanova, Matt Fraction. And you know, I'd followed their other releases in North America because you just look at their work and you realize that they're amazing craftspeople, amazing illustrators. Smoke and Mirrors and Roland and some of the other books that I read, I was like, these guys are these are really something. But it was, I think, first on Casanova where they had really been pushed into an area where it was just, they were doing comics in a way that not many people or maybe anyone was doing them. And then they started writing and drawing their own comics as well. They had done small stories like D.E. Tales, short stories that had been collected by Dark Horse. But really, with their work Day Tripper, I think they became one of the biggest forces to be reckoned with in all of comics. Writers, artists, doing anything that they want and everything that occurs to them. Even just a series coming up I was talking to them the other day where they're writing and not drawing, and I think that's pretty amazing too. Their work both together and separately is pretty phenomenal, and you know, it's a little bit maybe hypocritical to say, but we represent their original art sales at the Beguiling. We sell their pages, and the thing I look forward to most every year is going to San Diego to meet them because I know they'll have another cache of originals to look at, another big stack of art that no one gets to see but me and the lucky folks who purchase them. I am very grateful to have gotten to know these fellows over the last couple of years. I'm grateful to get to handle their originals, which are gorgeous. And I'm grateful that they're producing comics because it helps me sell more comics at the store, it provides me with wonderful things to read, and it gives me stuff to talk about when they come to Toronto. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Gabriel Ba and Fabio Moon. And if you're not familiar with any of these fine fellows' work and you just wandered into the wrong place off the street, are you in for a treat? Because sitting directly to my left is Mark Asquith. Mark Asquith what does Mr. Campbell used to describe? Are you the nexus of all comic realities at this point? The crossroads, the man at the like. Mark knows everybody and everything.
He's the donut hole.
He's the donut hole upon which we all are the donut. He's amazing. Mark is a producer at Space Television. His credits in comics and television extend much further and wider, and he's been instrumental in so many things. And most importantly, to me and to all of us in this room, he has been a tremendous supporter of TCAF since before there was a TCAF. And I honestly don't think some days that we would be here without his support and without marketing the festival the way he's helped us, and without his just general words of encouragement. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to Mark, who's going to lead you through an evening with these three fine cartoonists. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Asquith.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think you oversold me. I'm a fan, and I'm a fan who's just lucky enough to do what I love for a living. And when you're a fan, the line between your work life and your life completely blurs. I discovered comics at the age of 4, and they were Asterix and Tintin, and I have never had a period of my life where I was not reading comics and books and seeing movies, so it's all part of a giant cultural melange for me, and I'm sure for these guys. Now, what's interesting to me about meeting all three of you today on the stage is that you guys have a mutual admiration society. So tell me, first of all, Gabriel and Fabio, how you came across the work of Jeff Smith.
Well, we were 14. No, we were in college. We were in college, and we were working in a museum, and
We were tour guides.
yeah, we were tour guides. We would tell people, oh, how this is great, and it's the biennial of arts in São Paulo, and it's one of the biggest biennials of art. So there's São Paulo, and there's 2 in Europe. So it was a great year with a lot of great art, and we were the only ones who did comics working there. But there were a lot of other guides who worked with us who read comics, and they said, what do you read? And I said, oh, I like superheroes, and I like Frank Miller, and I like Mike Mignola. And okay, so they are very famous. And they read completely different things. And said, are you reading this guy called Jeff Smith and Bone? No. You have to read Bone. So luckily, I don't know how much Jeff knows the impact it had on his Bone comics. I think that was the same year that he was publishing with Image in a partnership, and I think that made it much easier for comics to get to Brazil, to be imported. So there were a bunch of Image versions of the Bone comics there, and there was the latest issues and new issues being reprinted, so I could get caught up on the Bone issues. And it was around the time he was doing. It was right after The Eyes of the Storm, and he was doing the Dragon Slayer. So it was all those issues in the forest with a lot of black and white and a lot of action and a lot of mystery. And Thorn was discovering that she was related to some ancient mystic thing. And it was so interesting that we said, what are we doing reading those super boring heroes? This is so much more interesting and so captivating. And then we came back and we read all the other 3 first trades, which were the funny ones. So I discovered Bone being this very dark adventure thing. And then I reread it and discovered the beginning was very funny. And then we were hooked. And then that stuff influenced our entire next year of comics, which was 97.
Next 10 years.
Yeah.
I'd never heard that story before. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, and
They used to send me letters. I used to get letters. Especially Fabio in the beginning. And Fabio Moon, he signed it Fabio Moon. And how could you forget that? And after every issue, I would get a letter from Fabio. And it was always a really smart letter. And I actually looked forward to it, getting to hear from Fabio. And then one day I met Fabio. And I can't remember if I think I just met you for the first year.
yeah, I think we were probably like divided going
But I was like in
all
San
over.
Diego at the big Comic-Con International. You came up and introduced yourself, and it's like Fabio Moon, who writes the letters. And then all of a sudden, you guys are doing comics, and then you're doing really good comics, and then you're like doing great comics, and everybody's talking about you, and now you're like going around the world. Where'd you just come from? Naples.
Yeah, we just came from Naples, from another
Well,
festival.
you were guests of a comic book show there.
Yeah, and it's good.
It's good.
It's good.
No, it's interesting. With the internet, people aren't writing letters, but your first 3 letters to Bone were from Torontonians.
Yeah, from Bruce Peck, who's sitting out there, from you, and Fabio, who is not really, he's from sort of near Toronto.
No, Mark Meyerson wrote you, another guy, an animator. Right. So all of this is happening. And what's interesting to me, you can even tell from how they're interacting on the stage, but one of the things that all of you share is you're really, really open to collaboration. Why do you think that's so important in comics?
You talking to me?
Well, I'm talking to all 3 of you. You might as well make it you.
I have done some collaboration, but mostly I like to read comics that are done by one person who writes and draws, and like everything from Peanuts and Charles Schultz, or Hergé, who does not do Tintin, by the way. He does Tintin. We've been arguing about this for 20 years.
Wait till he goes to Belgium, and it'll all be solved.
That sounds like something Luke Skywalker rides. I must ride my tauntaun.
May the 4th be with you, Jeff. No.
Oh.